And welcome back. And I hope that everyone is having a good day thus far and will continue to have one for the remainder of your day. And if you're watching these videos in series, the last video we did, we went ahead and added the map lights, as you can see here. And I'm just going to close and open up the door so you can kind of see the way those look. The red LEDs did come in. So you can see we've got our map lights active and our dome light active. And I'll get on the lab bench power supply towards the end of this video, and I'll show you the current draw of those LEDs versus just the single dome light that we have. And after measuring things, even with those now being LEDs, we're well under the current draw of just a standard dome light was. So circuit wise, we're safe. What I figured we would do today is go ahead and run the truck again and get it back up to operating temperature like we've done before, now that we've done the SRV repair on the intake. And we went ahead and, even though we vacuumed the cooling system and filled it, we went ahead and put our spill-proof funnel in, as you can see here, and put a little bit of coolant in it. We'll get, like I said, we'll get the system up to temperature and just allow it to potentially bleed any pockets of air that might still be in the system. We got a little bit of a leak there. Let me push the funnel down. You can see it kind of seeping out the edge there. And I have looked at this Banks module this sensor that we're using for the pressure slash boost. I should say what we're going to be using for our boost sensor. Sorry. I did get a new sensor in, and it did the exact same thing as the old sensor. So I have contacted Banks. We went over a few things. They're actually doing some testing internally inside of their lab to see if they can replicate the issue I'm seeing with this particular sensor. And they're supposed to contact me back and kind of let me know next steps. So I'll bring you along for that one. You'll know as soon as I know. So also, while we're doing this test today, just kind of letting things get up to operating temperature again, what I'm going to do is, we covered this a little bit during the first startup video, but I want to just kind of keep an eyeball on the temperature versus the oil pressure, just so we can kind of get a good idea using this Melling high volume pump that we're using, you know, what the cold startup is. And by cold startup, this truck has been in the garage for probably 4 or 5 days at this point. Hasn't been started. So it's cold relative to the ambient temperature of the garage right now, which is about 73, 74 degrees. So it's cold in the sense that cold from just not being started for X number of days, not cold in the sense that, you know, it's outside and the winter elements and, you know, you're looking at 10 or 20 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, with that being said, we are taking advantage of the rather nice spike in temperatures that we have outside, and we're using that to help us run this truck today, in the sense that we've got a garage door crack for ventilation. I'm going to start up a ventilation fan here in the window, and like I said, the outside temperature, I think we're supposed to be in the 70s today, believe it or not. Big change from being in the teens and lower in the previous week. Anyway, with that being said, we've got our scan tool hooked up here as well. So we'll be doing like we did during the first start, just kind of running things, checking for any DTCs that might come up during this run. And of course, just keeping an eyeball on our spill-proof funnel, just making sure that it doesn't exhaust that supply of coolant. If it does, we'll top it off a little bit more. The last thing that we need to do while this is running is that we're going to, again, check on our transmission fluid levels once we get down into a normal idle. And just see if we'll be checking the add/cold mark. Now, per the dipstick, if the line is between add and cold, the dipstick says to not add fluid. Now, if we're on the add section of the dipstick only, then we'll add a little bit of fluid until we get up to until we get up to the cold section. Sorry, if we get in between add and cold, we'll stop, or if we get to cold, we'll stop. It takes a while for the transmission, especially setting it idle and not being under load, for it to get into the hot space. So I'm only looking to fill it just as it starts, just to get it into that add/cold area, and then we'll stop. We'll consider it good, and then we'll wait until we get the truck back out on the road and do a proper test drive on it and get it up to get the temperature, or I should say get the transmission up to temperature, and then we'll check it on the dipstick for the hot scale and make sure that we, again, have the appropriate amount of fluid. So we've went through, we've got everything reattached. I'm going to put the fuel pump fuse back in. And the first thing we're going to do, we're going to key cycle it a couple of times, get fuel pressure back in the fuel rail, because remember, we had to remove the intake to fix the SRV issue. So we have no pressure in our fuel rail right now. And I can show you that on the Banks device. I may have to put the key in the ignition for it to show us the gauge layout that I want to use. Let's see here. Yeah, so you're seeing 15 psi in this top number here. And what that is, that's fuel rail pressure. And you'll notice the other two ports, which we have mapped in here, but we have the sensors disconnected. That's why you're seeing 81.9 psi. But 15 psi is the 100 psi pressure sensor on the fuel rail. And you can see it's just reading barometric pressure for the sea level that we're at right now, which is, it'll fluctuate between 14.9 and 15, and that should come up to about 60 to 70 psi with a couple key cycles. Once we get the fuel rail pressurized, I'm going to run out, make sure that we're not getting any drips from that fitting on that fuel rail, and if we're not, we'll go ahead and go for a startup at that point. And that was the issue. Just to recap on this again, once that boots up, and the reason why that's going to sleep is because it's not receiving an RPM signal from the engine. But the issue that we had using the 15 psi sensor that Banks is looking into is that the 15 psi sensor would report anywhere between like 75 and 80 psi, and it shouldn't be doing that. It should be reporting close to barometric pressure, just like this 100 psi sensor is doing. So again, they're pulling some product off the shelf as we speak. They've got it in their lab and they're doing some testing on it, and I'll definitely let you know kind of what they come back with once they reach back out to me. So let me put you on pause. I'm going to put this fuel pump fuse back in and I'll bring you back. One moment. And welcome back. I wanted to interrupt the video at this point because as we were editing this video, I realized I meant to include this and I forgot. So I'm going to interject at this point, and afterwards we'll bring you back to the meat of the video. But this was in reference to a comment I made about the LEDs that you just saw. And I said I would bring you back and we get out the lab bench power supply here just so you can kind of see the current draw difference. So right now we're set for about 12.5 volts. And then we're set for a maximum amperage output of 1.01 amps, basically 1 amp. And I'm using 12.5 volts as just being kind of resting battery voltage, because most of the time that you're going to have your lights on in your vehicle is, unless you're doing something like a remote start, you're just going to be opening the door from the engine not running, and you're probably going to be right about 12.5 volts or so, just resting battery voltage. Obviously, depending on the strength of your battery. Now, even though you may start the vehicle and you get some additional charging voltage in there from the alternator, charging voltage can be anywhere from 13.5 to 14.5 volts. Keep in mind that at least on this Ram, the interior lights are controlled by the body control module. So it may not even, the lights may never see that full 13, 14 charging volts. But what I'm going to do first is just hook up the normal dome light that would have been in this particular Ram when it had just the single dome light. So this is the filament old school type bulb. So at 12.5 volts, you can see we're pulling 780 milliamps, so 0.78 amps. And that's for the single dome light, which we had. Now remember, we changed that out with this particular LED one here, and I'll put a link in the description at least to the LEDs I'm using. Now keep in mind I haven't tested these long term, so it's still a test that needs to be done. But this LED is fairly bright once I get it back on the alligator clips here. Tell you what, let me try to clip it this way. Yep, that's better. So once again, that's our LED replacement for our dome light. Pretty bright. And you can see 0.15 amps. In other words, 150 milliamps. So we got 150 milliamp load on our dome light, or our new LED dome light. And remember, we also have 2 of these in our map light, because remember, we upgraded to the map lights, but we also spliced in to that lighting circuit that original dome light. And these particular map lights are directional. So if they don't work one way, you just got to flip them around to the other polarity. And ensure you're making contact with the terminals. Well, let's see. Just fidgeting with this bulb here on the side, getting it to grab the terminals. There we go. So you can see we got 2 of these. We're about 0.04, and usually these will end up, and I've tested these before, to be about 0.05. So 50 milliamps. Now we're down to about 0.3, 0.4. There you go, 0.5. So 50 milliamps times 2, because we got 2 of these for our map lights. So that's 100 milliamps for our map lights. And then going back to our dome light, 150. So we got 150 plus another 100, so that's what, 250 milliamps versus the pole on a single dome light, which was 780. So you can see we're significantly less current draw on that circuit, even though we're driving more lights. So we're safe to kind of proceed with the way we have it configured, because we're nowhere near the load factor of a single old school standard incandescent light on that particular circuit. So hopefully I helped answer that question. And like I said, I'll show you the 2 products here. That's what we're using for the dome light in our case. And that's the larger red one you see here with the resistor and the heat sink on it. And what that resistor and that capacitor is that for those cases in which you may be using this in a vehicle in which that bulb is monitored by by either the body computer or the PCM or one of the other many modules, sometimes it looks for a certain resistance to be on that circuit, and then if it doesn't see it, it'll think the bulb's bad because it's expecting an incandescent bulb. So a lot of times you'll see these LEDs labeled CAN bus. Just meaning that they've got a resistor in there to kind of trick the system into thinking it's still an incandescent bulb. And I'll put a link to these guys here, and this is what we're using. These are what they call T10 bulbs, in this case for our map lights, and we're just using 2 of those. Even though when I ordered them, they come as a big old bag of them, so we got plenty. Now these are the ones you'll notice on this one, it's got a polarity sensitive rating on them. So in other words, they don't have the circuitry in here to account for having them plugged in either direction. So if you plug these in and they don't work, they just ask that you unplug it, flip the bulb around 180 and plug it back on the socket, and they should illuminate. But with that being said, I'll let you go and I'll bring you back to the video. So one moment. And welcome back. So I'm just going to power up our gauge here. I'm going to key cycle it a few times, and you're going to see that fuel rail pressure bounce up here a bit. You see we're at 30, 33, 32. So I'm going to key cycle it one more time. You can see we're about 75, and I don't know if you heard it. Kind of hard to hear, but I can hear the fuel rail pressurize. Now I'm just going to come out here and check and make sure it's not spraying fuel all over the place. Oh, and it doesn't look like that it is, which is good. What I'm doing, I'm just feeling around here to make sure that we're not having any drips, and we're not. Good. Okay, so when we start up, we're just going to kind of, once again, just keep an eagle eye on everything. I'm going to get you looking at the oil pressure first. Okay, let's get our Banks gauge, get it to wake back up. And the Banks gauge will stay awake once we get some RPM here. So we got about 66 PSI of fuel rail pressure that you can see there. And let's go. So there you go. Getting about 78 PSI of oil pressure. We're just going to wait for it to come down off a high idle. Now that's what the gauge is reporting. You can see our manual pressure gauge over here. I should say analog versus digital. I'm going to turn on the exhaust fan. Exhaust fan's running. Okay, not seeing any leaks. That's good. Not seeing any leaks underneath. And let's do a code scan here. Nope. Do an automatic search for the VIN. Found it. Let's just do a smart detection so it scans everything. So we got some PCM codes. Okay, fuel system rich and cold start ignition timing performance. Yeah, those should clear up on their own. I had that code come up before, and it's more than likely going to be caused by that fuel rail probably just having some air in it, plus the fact that the truck is we had the battery disconnected. So we're going to give that a bit, and it should clear itself up. And if that ignition timing performance comes back, yeah, obviously I'll get the tuner involved, but those three are probably just symptoms, again, of having the truck power disconnected and it, you know, basically having all that adaptive knowledge kind of wiped out. And it may take a couple of key cycles for that to clear as well. So we're down to about 73 psi of oil pressure. What I'm looking for is coolant temps about 140 degrees. Remember, we're running a 180 degree thermostat. So I'm going to pause you real quick. I'm going to go out there and check the transmission fluid level, and I'll bring you right back. One moment. And welcome back. So we're down to about 41 psi. Coolant temperature is 190, which means the thermostat should have opened. You can see that we have a higher level in our spill-proof funnel than what we had before. 192. Cooling fan has come on. You can see we're getting some air. We are actually getting some air out of the system. You can see our temperatures are coming down now that the cooling fan's on. We're back down to about 179, 177. That's good. So at least we did get a little bit of air out of the system. Oil pressure is down to about 38 psi. And we did add about a half a quart of transmission fluid. We were right on the add line. Cooling fan is cycled and shut off, which is good. So if we go back up to our coolant temp, we're about 185. The exhaust is smelling better. Yeah, it was definitely running a little bit rich on that first startup, which isn't surprising. Again, it's got to get started. It's got to start learning everything again, getting itself corrected. So 35 psi with a coolant temp of 185 degrees. So I am going to head out there and check the transmission fluid one more time now that that extra half a quart has had time to sit, and I'll bring you right back. One moment. So welcome back. Forgive me for screaming over the sound of the motor, but the transmission fluid is right where we want it. When I shut it down, I'll bring it back and show you. We're right at the add/cold mark, which is where I would expect to be since the transmission is not up to temp yet. So what I'm going to do is let this cooling fan shut off, and then we'll go out there and remove our spill-proof funnel. So coolant temp is 185. You should be able to watch it start to drop here, hopefully. And it may not drop too much because now that the thermostat's open. Yep, there you go. We're dropping a little bit, 185, 183. So let's see something here. Let's see if we can get our spill-proof funnel out of the way. Doesn't look like we've got any more air coming up out of it. So we could just take our little stopper, put it down inside. Now we're going to lose a little bit of coolant. It's not going to be a spill-less operation. Yeah, we got a little bit we're going to lose. Hold on, let me get this situated and I'll bring you back. One moment. So welcome back. So you can see nice thing about the spill-proof funnel is that once you remove the stopper, we can just drop the excess back off in our jug. You can see we got our actual radiator cap back on. We're getting nice and warm. We're getting nice and up to temp. See, 183, everything's still showing good. Transmission fluid looks good at this point. We got that little bit of air out of the system. So what I'm going to do now is go ahead and just cut the key and let it sit for a bit. Wow, I'm going to wait for that, see if that cooling fan will shut off first before I do this. And oil pressure, so 183 oil, 183 coolant temp, and we're down to about 27 psi of oil pressure. Now, this is with the engine up to its 180 degree operating temperature now, and that would be, I think, what you would consider curb idle oil pressure, which were higher than what the factory states, and I'll pull those numbers up here, and I'll probably put them up on the screen. But believe it or not, all data shows as low as 4 psi minimum for curb idle, and we're hitting 27 with everything up to temp. Transmission temps about 109, 110. Oil pressure 27. Oil temperature is about 161. Coolant temp is holding at about 183 now with the cap on. Perfect. She's calmed down to a nice idle, and the really rich exhaust smell that we were first getting when we started up seems to be calming itself down. Again, just those same pending codes. It may take a couple of ignition cycles before those pending codes go away. Cooling fan is still running. And let's see what our engine temp is. So oil pressure right now 26 psi. Oil temp 163. Coolant temp is 185. So I'm going to go ahead and cut the key at this point. And we'll kind of let everything calm down for a bit, cool off for a bit, and then we'll come back and we'll do a, yeah, you can see the smoke from stuff, you know, rust, I should say. I'm drawing a blank on the word. It's rust penetrant. There we go. Rust penetrant, and having oils in our hands and everything. Everything's just finally, you know, everything's getting up to temp and still burning off the exhaust. Plus some of this is plus some of the haze you see is exhaust, which is why we got the garage door open behind me. And we got the vent fan running in there. So we're going to crack the garage door open a little bit more. That's what I was saying. We were taking advantage of the nice weather that we were getting to do this run. And I can actually feel the transmission cooler here, and it's starting to get warm. So perfect. Let me pull that dipstick out of there before I pause you and bring you back and show you where we were at on the stick. So you saw there in the dash, it was about 110, 111 degree transmission temperature. So still what it would consider as cold. Woo, stick's nice and warm though. And we were, after adding that extra half a core right here on the cold bubble. So we were filling up the add bubble and we were filling up the cold bubble. So now that we're in this range with the transmission not up the temp, we should be good there. And of course, obviously, once we get it on the road and get the transmission up to full temperature, which according to the stick, it'd probably be hard for you to see that engraving. But basically, let's see. So they don't want you to add oil on lower holes if cold, 70 degrees Fahrenheit, or upper holes for hot oil. So if the transmission's over 180 and you're up here in the hot range, they don't want you adding it. And if you're down here at, what did they say, 70 degrees? Yeah, 70 degrees or less, and you're down here in low area, then they don't want you adding it. Now, when we added it, we were above the 70 degree for cold. So yeah, and I think the transmission, I think about 180 there. About 170, 180, I think is what they consider up to operating temperature, which as you saw there in the dash, we're not quite there. We're about 110, 111. So we're good on our transmission fluid at this point. We're good on our radiator fluid at this point. Let's check our... Yeah, we need to add a little bit of fluid to power steering. You can see where you want from the... maybe you can see that. We want from the... Let me tighten you up here so you stop falling forward. There's our minimum line there. There's our max. So we need to add a little bit of fluid here to get us back up to max. And of course the brake fluid that remains unchanged from when we did the bleeding. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to get pause you. When we get this filled up, I'm going to let this set a little bit longer just to kind of let things settle. And then we'll come back and we'll do another key on engine start and do another sweep for codes. So one moment. And welcome back. Well, in the previous clip, you saw that after running the truck for a bit, we have a recurring DTC that keeps clearing when the engine is off and coming back when the engine is started. And I believe in the last clip, we kind of left off with looking at the fuel trim data, short and long term. And what we're seeing on that is that the long term is pegged out, meaning that it's constantly seeing the short term always having to subtract fuel. And I think it's bouncing between a -12 and a -15. And generally you want those to be as close to zero as possible, both short and long. And I think it can go like to like a positive or -6 either way before the ECU starts to get a little concerned about it. Don't quote me on that, but there is a tolerance in there. But generally, you want them as close to zero as you can get. And so we left the clip, and I went on to look at a few things. And one of the things that we eventually discovered after doing a little bit of investigation is that I sent some incorrect information to the tuner. And I used Jay Green for the tune, as I mentioned before. He's the individual that we also got the cam kit from. So the cam, the springs, cam, valve springs, and push rods and such. In the sense that if you remember that we're using a tuning kit from Procharger. Well, that meant that it didn't come with the fuel components, meaning it didn't come with a little bag of additional hardware, like if you were going to install the injectors that come with their kit, and it also came with the map sensor, in our case a map sensor and a map sensor adapter to be able to use a bigger map sensor in a 1500 intake. And the map sensor kit that we ordered that they sent to us was for an SRT4, if you remember. And I sent that information to the tuner, and he came back with a question and asked if it was a 3-bar map sensor. Well, when I Googled it initially, I found an SRT4 3-bar map sensor. So I figured that was just confirmation as what we were looking for. However, I discovered yesterday that an SRT4 map sensor can either be a 2-bar or a 3-bar, depending on the application. So I called Procharger up to confirm which one they actually sell in their kit. Is it a 2 or a 3? And they confirmed that it was a 2-bar, not a 3-bar. So unfortunately, I gave the wrong information to my tuner, and as such, the tune was written thinking that the information being sent back to the PCM was going to be a reflection of the pressure seen by a 3-bar. Meanwhile, it's been seeing the signal output from a 2-bar, basically throwing the air-fuel mixture off a bit, which would definitely account for the fuel trim issue that we were seeing. So I got with Jay yesterday and let him know that it was a mistake on my part, that when I Googled that, I just ran with the first couple of postings I saw, which stated SRT4 as being a 3-bar, which was not the case, and once again confirmed that with Procharger. So he has revised the tune to reflect a 2-bar map sensor instead of a 3. And I'm getting ready to flash that tune to the truck as we speak. Now, I won't show you that process because we did that in the previous one, and not to burn up any additional camera time here because this video is actually getting to be a bit long. So I'm going to get it flashed. I'm going to bring you back. We're going to bring the scan tool back up. We'll let the truck run as we did before, and then we'll start checking for codes. And then we'll go in and look at the fuel trim data just like we did yesterday and see if those numbers look a little bit more in line with what will make us happy, as well as the ECU and the truck happy. So with that being said, let me pause you. I'm going to get this update flashed in here, and I'll bring you back. One moment. And welcome back. So we've got our new tune flashed to our truck at this point, and we've just got our scan tool up. And I'll pause you and I'll bring you back, and I'll get you more zoomed in on the scan tool here in a second. But we're going to do a startup here and just kind of keep an eyeball on our long and short term fuel trims and see if they stay more in line with again what will make us happy and the truck happy. So let me pause you, get you zoomed in. I'll bring you right back. One moment. And welcome back. So I got you zoomed in pretty good here, and I'll try to stand right about there and keep some of the glare out of the screen. Sorry, you're just seeing the shop glare from one of the shop lights overhead. But well, let's give ourselves a start up and see how this update fares for us. It's already looking better. Long terms are negative, or sorry, short terms are short terms are negative. That's actually not good. We'll see when it goes into closed loop what we come down to. So rather than eating up a bunch of camera time here, I'm going to pause this and kind of let it settle, and I'll bring you back. So one moment. Yeah, but so far the short terms aren't looking good. It's still wanting to pull a lot of fuel out. So one moment. So just want to bring you back and show you here that short terms have come down. You can see they're -6, -7. Long terms are trending down, which is kind of what we're looking for. Well, actually we want them to trend to 0, but long term's going to be a reflection of short term, and you can see the short term's coming down, but it's still taking about, you know, -6, -7 out. It's better. It's a lot better than what it was. I'm going to record some of this data. See, short terms are good. You can see you can see them occasionally. They're now getting into 2 and 0 and 2 and 0. So yeah, you can see these short terms are now looking much better than what they were yesterday. If you remember yesterday, they were like -12, -15. So since everything got reset with the flash, as it's kind of readapting and readjusting itself, it's starting to bring things into spec. And these long terms should eventually start to continue to trend down as our short terms kind of stay in a more normal looking range. Yeah, and we haven't set a fault code yet, so that's already better than what it was yesterday. So our coolant temp is up to about 190. I can show you that here. Coolant temp 190. So our cooling fan just kicked on. Oil pressure's down to 38. And she got a nice lope to her now. You could actually feel it. The camera probably won't do it justice, but I'll take you a little bit by the exhaust. So let's get back and do one more scan with our scan tool. Let's just do a smart detection and scan everything. Now there's going to be some codes in here, and they're going to be stored just due to loss of communication and such. As long as they're stored and not active, but the important one is the PCM. It's not complaining. So if we do a system list, yeah, you can see these are all stored codes. Just yeah, lost communication, and that would be because we did the system update, which takes the bus offline. And the only one we got active right now, which is what we expect to see, which is the heated steering wheel, which we already know we're not going to have that one ever clear. So if we take one last look at our long-term, short-term fuel trims. Yeah, okay, you can see our short-term is now coming down where it's bouncing between 0 and 3, it looks like. And our long-terms, over time, they will trend down as needed. All right, perfect. Let's just do one more scan. Okay. And now that we've got everything up to temp, let's go ahead and cut it, give it a few minutes of rest. Okay, I'm going to pause you for a bit. We're going to let things calm down for a moment, and I'll bring you right back. So one moment. And welcome back. So we're just going to do a start up here. It's had a few moments to rest. So this won't be a cold start, but it'll be a start as we're sitting at operating temperature. Okay. And then while it's kind of coming down in a closed loop, and you can see our short terms are starting to trend down as it's idling down here. Yeah, see, now we're hitting 0s and 1s. Okay, and they did that pretty quick, so that's good. And we'll just give it a few more minutes here, kind of see what it's going to do. Yeah, twos, one's getting there. All right, again, so we're starting to see some zeros pop in. All right, beautiful. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to run a report on that. Okay. So yeah, twos, ones, and zeros. All right, beautiful. Okay, much better than what we were seeing yesterday. We're going to do one more code scan of our PCM and no DTCs. All right, beautiful. So as of this point, what you saw in the earlier of the video, we've got our transmission fluid topped up, we've got our coolant topped up, our engine oil is topped up, and we have now, after getting the correct information to our tuner about our map sensor, you can see we're no longer throwing a DTC error code for Rich on banks 1 and bank 2. So let me go ahead and shut this down so it'd be easier to talk to you. All right, perfect. So at this point, we are good, at least for the immediate tune, at least of being able to get the vehicle on the road, which is what the tuner wants to see next. He wants us to do a little bit of kind of short 4 to 5 minute driving, a lot of starts, a lot of stops, and kind of report back to him how it's going to go. Now, one other piece of information that he is asked to see, which we will have to add into the system, is a wideband oxygen sensor, which will help him dial this particular motor with this particular supercharger down to where it needs to be, and he needs that piece of critical information in order to do that. Now, with that being said, I have looked into it, and the same individuals who make the muffler, Magnaflow, they make a new catalytic converter assembly. In this truck, the Y pipes that come off of the exhaust manifolds before it goes into the exhaust pipe is a Y shape, and it's all fixed. So the catalytic converters and the Y pipe are all one piece. Magnaflow makes a replacement, but they make it in such a way that the driver is sectional from the passenger, so you can take it apart in pieces. So what I think we're going to do is we're going to order that kit. That will allow me to take the exhaust manifold piece for the driver's side, take it down to an exhaust shop and just get an additional bung welded into that pipe, and that will give us an ability to screw a wideband O2 sensor into. So that'll be in an upcoming video. So at this point, just to recap, transmission fluid is good, brake fluid is good, coolant is good. You saw us top that off in the last video. Engine oil is good at this point. So basically all our fluids are good. We're getting good idle in here now. We're no longer getting the check codes for the SRV because we service that, as well as we're no longer getting the check codes for the Rich Bank 1 and Bank 2. And again, that was my fault. I gave the incorrect map sensor information to my tuner. So to recap on that one, Procharger sent an SRT4 map sensor, and when I first Googled it, what came up was the 3-bar version of that sensor. Apparently, you can also get it in 3-bar and a 2-bar, and the one Procharger has in their kits is a 2-bar. So, again, as you saw, after that update was made, we're no longer seeing the rich conditions, and those fuel trims are behaving the way we would expect them to behave. So with that being said, I will bring you back for the next one, in which I think what we'll do is continue to take advantage of the nice spike in warm temperatures, which is kind of unusual for this time of year for where I'm at. But I think we're going to take advantage of that spike in temperature and possibly recharge the AC. We got a couple cans of refrigerant, as you can see here, two 12-ounce cans. This system, per the book, requires 22 ounces of refrigerant. So it'll be one can and then 10 ounces of another 12-ounce can, which we'll have to weigh 10 ounces of this just to make sure that we don't overcharge the system when we do it, but that'll be in the next video. Either way, this video has gone on long enough. I hope this was beneficial, and I'll bring you back for the next one. If you have not subscribed already, please consider doing so. Our goal for this year, I'm going to set a goal, and that goal is to get to at least 3,000 or more subscribers. So if you have not, please consider doing so. And if you have, I do thank you immensely. And with that being said, I will let you go, and I'll bring you back for the next one. Thank you much. Bye.